everybody. Thanks for joining us. I'm Lori Frost. This is Andy Bondi. Today we want to talk to you about the continued relevance of PECS. Andy's going to be updating you on some of the latest research. Andy and I have a couple of questions for each other, and then we'll open it up to your questions.
So we're going to talk a little bit about PECS and if it's still relevant. Some people ask that question in kind of a direct fashion. They say, isn't PECS like a dinosaur? Why do we want to use Stone Age technology when we have cool devices and everything? For one, when we started developing the PECS protocol, even in the late 80s and early 90s, there were devices. They were called voice output communication aids.
Yes.
And they were big and bulky and expensive, complicated to program, weighty to carry around, but they were based on pictures and they did have voices. And we actually tried them in our school. Some parents got them to try, and what we saw was some kids sitting in the back of the room, pushing buttons, making sounds, not interacting with anybody. It was a toy for them. It wasn't a communication device. Clearly, people have changed and learned. A lot of people use SGDs now from the beginning with the PECS protocol to ensure that there is an interaction. But PECS research, if you will, is alive and well and going on around the world. And I think some of the problem in sometimes the United States is we're very US centric. We think we're the only people that do research and study seriously. On the various PECS websites, there are links to probably about 250 studies now from around the world, and I have trouble even keeping up with them. But I thought I would review some recent ones just to give everybody a flavor of what is going on with research about PECS in a variety of places. So just last year, there was a study by a group in Italy looking at behavioral interventions in autism and found that PECS significantly improves social communication skills in only 15 to 40 hours over 6 months. That was largely based on a study by Schweibman and Stamer that was looking at use of PECS and PRT. But that was in a journal for clinical child psychology, not a behavioral journal, not a speech journal. Last year, our consultant in Russia, Olga Popova, used Lori's guidelines and Joy McGowan on transitioning from PECS to the PECS 4 Plus app, which is an app that functions as an SGD, showing nice effects on both communication acquisition and behavior improvement over time. Recently, someone in England, just this past month, did a review of, did a survey of over 280 people in the UK and found that the more formal training they had, going to level 1, level 2 training, was clearly associated with improved implementation and outcome. So the better trained implementers are, the better the outcome is for learners. Someone did a study in Brazil just a couple of years ago and was looking not only at what happens to expressive communication skills, but was noting that significant improvement in understanding information was also correlated with starting and using PECS. There are studies from other interesting places. There was a study last year from Indonesia looking at the impact of PECS on speaking ability of young learners. And there were 17 children involved in that study. Somebody in Iran was taking a look at teaching some youngsters with autism who had pretty good language skills, spoken language skills, but wanted to teach them English and used PECS as an intermediary between their language and English and found it effective. Not something I would have thought of, but it was an interesting, use of PECS. People are looking at training methods. in a Journal of Developmental Disabilities, there's a publication last year showing that video modeling was effective in getting people to implement PECS effectively. There were studies in Abu Dhabi talking about how PECS was very important for parents and teachers, and they were convinced that these were effective methods. Similarly, in the United Arab Emirates, they took a look at the implications of PECS effectiveness and how they were urging policymakers to support parents to be able to get the training and support for using PECS at home and in the community. There was a study in India taking a look at not just speech outcomes, but looking at social relationship and reciprocity, as well as general communication skills after 6 months of PECS training. This was a large group design. There were over 60 youngsters in the study, 30 in each condition. So a lot of people around the world don't always look at the same measures that we look at. What phase of PECS, how many words, how many pictures. They look at many other broad effects.
How long it takes you to get from phase to phase.
Yes. So again, these are the types of studies that are going around the world. Somebody in Canada last year took a look, can you teach PECS in an intense situation, have kids go to a summer camp and work on PECS? And they found not only was it effective in the camp situation, it generalized to the home and to parents. So they were very happy about it. So there's continued research on PECS and how to do it effectively, looking at parents with very strong parental support, teacher support. It's not viewed as, oh, it's easy, so we'll do it. Everybody admits that you need training and practice and feedback to be able to do things well. So we're very encouraged by lots of the research going on around the world. I will put up summaries of the studies and links and abstracts shortly. It was a little too complicated to get it all into the chat group for today.
You'll be posting that where?
We'll post it on the Facebook site as well as our websites. So speaking of SGDs, a lot of people say, well, why didn't you just start with an SGD? Why even bother with PECS anymore?
Andy mentioned earlier that a colleague, Joy McGowan, she is an AAC specialist at Easter Seals of Southeast Pennsylvania. And she contacted me many years ago and said, the iPad is out, Proloquo to Go is out. Parents want me to start with Proloquo and skip PECS. And I tried it, Lori. And what she said was, and I always defer to Joy because she's a lot of years of experience and expertise in looking at speech generating devices. And what Joy said to me was, if the speech generating device is the learner's first communication system, she was struggling with kids who were more stuck in the navigation issues related to the speech generating device than they were with once they got to where they needed to go to get pictures, pushing a picture to make it talk. So when I look at children as candidates for a speech generating device, the first thing I'm going to look at is, are they currently communicating? If so, then the big if so, and they're communicating with PECS, the big strategy change is going to be learning how the navigation steps. So going to a new folder, going back, pushing speak all, pushing erase. Those are the navigation steps that I talk about. And I think it's much easier, and what Joy has found is much quicker acquisition of the SGD if the only thing new that's being taught is navigation, not communication.
Yes. So as a speech pathologist, what does it mean to you, and what has it been to you in your career to use a behavioral approach?
Okay, full disclosure, I'm married to Andy. We're business partners. We've been doing this for over 30 years, and I have learned so much about applied behavior analysis, and it's made me a better speech pathologist. When I was in graduate school, and it was a long time ago, there was a lot of emphasis on um, teaching communication in meaningful ways. But what I was taught was the vocabulary is paramount. That is probably one of the first things that we're going to focus on. But what applied behavior analysis taught me is that, fine, I'm going to be working on teaching new vocabulary. If I had a student who was struggling, I kind of said, okay, this is too hard for the student. And what behavior analysis has taught me is I had a sloppy lesson. So behavior analysis has taught me to look at the motivation for kids to sit with me and do whatever it is I want them to do. And I like to think I'm a fun, entertaining, fun to interact with person. But a lot of times that's not enough. It's the lesson I want to do, the targets I have for the children. I need to figure out a way to motivate these kids. The next thing the other big lesson I've learned from behavior analysis is what they refer to as response effort. How difficult is it to do this? How difficult is it to say a word? How difficult is it to push a button? How difficult is it to sign? Regardless of the modality, I think we need to be looking at how difficult is this for our learners? And here's where I see another issue with speech generating devices is without a lot of customization. I've used TouchChat. I've used TouchChat Word Power. I've used Proloquo. I've used Cough Drop. I've used Tablet. And without a lot of customization out of the box, there are a lot of steps for the kids to go through to be able to put together a sentence, "Hi, Mom." So what I've learned from behavior analysis is we need to simplify it. And when I had children who failed, and Andy's question to me was, is it because the task was too hard, or they just weren't interested in you, or you didn't have vocabulary that was meaningful to them? So Andy was talking to me both about motivation of the learners and about how difficult it is for them to engage in a particular behavior. We speechies know, don't start with a sound blend, start with an individual sound. That's what I mean by response effort. We speechies also know that some sounds are more difficult for some learners to produce than others. That's what I mean by the difficulty, what we call this response effort.
So, what do you think about using pictures either with PECS or a device inhibit the development of speech? And does using a device, speech generating device, guarantee that kids will acquire speech?
Well, as Andy said, there's over 30 years of PECS research. And what the research shows us is that with good quality fidelity implementation, the majority of our children who are 5, 6, or younger develop speech. And those are the kids who will never need a speech generating device. What we also know from the research is that speech development starts happening once kids get to phase 4 or have through phase 4. So my general strategy, and one that Joy has adopted, is let's get these kids through phase 4. Then if they haven't started talking, we will switch to a speech generating device. Now, if you tell me, well, we've been doing PECS for a year and we're not at phase 4 yet, my question to you will be, check your fidelity. Are you actually teaching it as the protocol is intended to be taught frequently enough? Because sometimes that's what's delaying acquisition of phase 4. It's my sloppy teaching, not something on the part of the learner. Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Okay. Is PECS compliance based?
Well, that word compliance generates a lot of reactions from a lot of people. And I'm going to kind of phrase, why are people interested in this word compliance, and why do people literally get emotionally reactive to, oh, what do you mean? It's, you shouldn't do compliance, or should we do compliance? What's the issue? There are some children that when you start to interact with them and you give them an instruction, you ask them something, they do something else other than respond appropriately. Whether it's stand, clap their hands, give you something, give you a hug, answer a question, they do something else. Many people from many different fields have called that non-compliance. So I ask you to do something, you do something else, quote, you don't do it. We say, oh, she's non-compliant. And number one, I despise the term non-compliance because you're trying to talk about a thing that isn't a thing. It's a non. So number one, try not to talk about non-compliance and stick to what is the kid actually doing. They're not doing a million things. Essentially, is an infinite number of things you're not doing. What we're supposed to understand is what you are doing. So this idea of non-compliance then got associated with, oh, I asked her something, she didn't do it, that's non-compliance. Kid comes into my clinic, she doesn't respond to me, she's non-compliant. And the issue is, some of the kids don't understand what you said to them.
The
So,
light bulb moment for me was when you said, well, compliance is following directions. Because then I can then go teach a bunch of directions and I can no longer say this child is non-compliant. He just doesn't understand anything I say.
right. So when a child is not understanding you, I once worked with a little girl, the team told me she was non-compliant, and when I figured out very quickly, she didn't know her name. She wasn't non-compliant. She did not know her name from anybody else's. That's a skill issue. That's not non-compliance. Non-compliance, if you will, really is most accurately describing a situation. I've seen you do this, and now you're not. So you are defying me. That's what non-compliance is implying, that we have a willful child who's defying us, and we clearly don't want that if what we want is control. But we don't want control. I'm a behavior analyst trying to get kids to advance through the educational system. I'm not trying to control them. That's the big problem. Anyone, and multiple fields do this, are trying to control the interaction. So work on teaching skills that are functional. That's the other issue. What is the instruction? Unfortunately, we do have people saying, stand up, sit down, clap your hands, touch it, a whole bunch of completely non-functional activities. Most kids are bored silly doing it. You are bored silly trying to teach it. So all your instruction should be functional and helpful to the youngster, the learner in that particular context. So no, we don't want to work on compliance and PECS. We're not trying to make kids do things. We are trying to help them learn skills, especially that skill of interacting with other people so they get what they want.
One thing that Andy has said that resonates with me and that I pass on to other people is the word compliance is being misused in a lot of environments. And I think if we're going to agree on this is a non-compliant child, we have to first of all identify what behavioral indications are that he's non-compliant. We have to define non-compliance and define compliance. Compliance means follow directions and the student's not, then I'm going to look at the directions I teach.
I'm going to modify that in the sense of work on, if you want child quote to comply, the issue is with what? Is what you're doing functional? Is it useful, helpful, practical to the learner? Okay. If they do, there are reinforcers that should be built into the situation, not just your praise and your happiness. Good job listening to me. The Army wants compliance. The Army has reasons that they want people to be compliant. This is school. This is home. This is life. Okay. So be very careful in working on compliance. Then as hard as you can, stop talking about non-compliance. It's certainly not a trait of someone.
So Andy, something I've been hearing recently is we will not use PECS because it involves physical prompting. Can you talk about that?
Yes, the concern about physical prompting comes from, to me, a broad misunderstanding about interacting with kids. Physical interaction can go in two directions. I can use physical interactions to stop you, restrain you, restrict your motions. And there are times when that is necessary. It's called taking care of someone. I have a child that looks like they're going to cross the street, and they are out, they're just walking. And they do not yet respond to anything that I say. Should I stand there and go, don't go into the street, it's dangerous? That would be negligent. That would be criminally negligent. Your job is to protect the child in that particular situation, physically make sure that child is safe. That is not a prompt. You are not prompting the child in that situation. You are restraining for the child's safety. So do not confuse prompts with restraints. A prompt is done to help a child acquire a particular skill. It's done all over our culture. People learn how to play golf, piano, musical instruments, manipulate clay, Play-Doh, many things are used with physical guidance. That's what a prompt is, something that is helpful. They can be physical, they can be gestural, they can be many different things. But it's a prompt only if it's helpful.
And the reason for the majority of my children, I choose some physical guidance in phase 1 is the prompt must work. If it doesn't, then it wasn't a prompt. And what I know about some of my 2, 3, and 4-year-olds, I can't say, give me the picture. They don't understand what I'm saying. I can't model it because they're not imitators. So that's why for the majority of my very early learners, I'm very briefly doing some physical guidance in phase 1. And the moment the student can do it on his or her own, that's when we stop the physical guidance.
All prompts, the whole
Yes.
point of all prompts is to get rid of them. I don't say fade just as a by the way. Fading is one way to get rid of prompts. There are many ways of getting rid of them, but your idea is you put a prompt in, you take it out. Simple rule of teaching. Okay.
One of the things that Andy has said to me many times over the years that's really resonated with me is our lessons are geared, especially our PECS lessons, our lessons that teach communication are geared towards teaching our users to control the people around him. So one of the skills we teach early on in PECS is requesting things. I like seeing the moment the child realizes I can get him to bring me things I like. That's for a lot of our kids, their big aha moment. This is really easy. In the past, you've made me try to talk. I can't do that. In the past, you've made me sign. I'm having trouble with that. But all I have to do is put a picture in your hand to get you to jump through hoops and bring me whatever I want. That's a powerful skill for our kids to learn early on.
Yeah, one of the most exciting things for me is when I see kids light up. And it's like, wait a minute, I give you a picture, you're going to give me what I want. Oh. See,
And
the
that,
whole point is when we interact with kids, when educators interact with kids, and I mean educators as teachers, speech pathologists, behavior analysts, anyone. Very often it's, okay, I'm going to figure out what interests you so that I can get you to do what I want. That is not our approach. Our approach is, what do you want? I'm going to convince you I'm a really nice person. I'm going to get those things to you. By the way, if you learn to communicate, that's another avenue to get things. So we're interested in what kids want. We're trying to make their life better, not my life more controlling. So there's an interesting question that's popped up, kind of relates to this about what are the steps in teaching break and specifically about getting kids back from a break. Break is one of those critical communication skills with everyone takes a break. Everyone needs to get away. Everyone encounters this situation. It's too boring. It's too long. I've done this for hours on, and you're too demanding. Everyone needs to get away. Kids do it now. We just not thrilled about the ways they take their breaks. So we formally teach kids to ask for a break, and the main reinforcer of a break is like in a situation now where there is no demand.
break means no demands.
Break means escape from demands. I am free from you. Now, how long? Not long. It's 1 or 2 minutes. That is it. Longer doesn't make it more effective. Okay, so I want a short break, get myself together, take a deep breath, do something or other, and then why should I come back? The problem is when break ends, kid is now sitting in a nice area, no demands, we set a timer, the bell goes off. What does our teacher head want to say? We always say, get back to work. And as long as they get back to work, the kid's thinking, no, I want a break. So we do not lead with our instruction. We do not lead with our demand. At the end of break, it's what are you working for? What is it that you're here for? Break only works if the time in the work time is profitable from the kid's point of view. Otherwise, I'm staying here. If the work area is dreadful and boring and non-interesting, then doing nothing is actually preferred than working without any benefit. So I need to remind the kids how depends on the kid I'm working with. Sometimes I have to show it. Sometimes there's a picture of it. Sometimes there's a word. All depends on what I know about this particular youngster.
How do you end a break?
We usually use some type of a timer or signal. As I said, we would teach a child to set the timer, turn a sand timer upside down, twist a button, push a button, start a timer, and the bell rings. Teacher comes up and simply says, "Hey, what do you want? What do you want to work for? What was it you're going to do?" Break should never lead to gym. If I took a break from doing, putting away the dishes, after break, I need to go put the dishes away and then go to gym. If you allow the kid to go to a break and then go to his favorite activity, hey, I'm going to ask for break all day long because it's just a different avenue. So break means escape. Good. We all need that escape. But then back to the real world. The real world is filled with delightful things, or it should be.
I follow a lot of dogs on Instagram. That's my break. And I have to be very strict with myself. You can go look at dogs on Instagram for 5 minutes, then you have to get back to work. And what I know when I go back to work is I can take that break again.
I want to go back to some of our discussion about SGDs and the appeal. And we all know that the appeal is that one is cool technology and it has a voice coming out of it. The issue is, what is the impact of the voice to the one learning to use the device? We understand it. So I push that button, it says, I want a cookie. I hear I want a cookie. What about the child? Well, the simplest thing anyone could do, and you could all do this all on your own with anyone using a device, is does the sound matter to the child, the user? Turn the sound off. The simplest thing in the world. Just turn it off. Does it really matter? Guess what? In all the research that I've reviewed over the last 40 years, only 2 people have actually tested it out. Turned off the sound. Kids continued to use the device, and there was no impact. Meaning the kid used the device with the sound, without the sound, had no impact on the use at all. So I'm not saying it never has an impact. What I'm saying is we don't know. You think your child is listening to the voice and it's important to the child, it's part of the interaction? Great, go test it.
Does the device help our kids learn to talk?
Well, the research on that, sadly, is there's no evidence of that. There is no evidence that the voice from these devices is the critical feature that leads to greater speech, either in young kids, middle-aged kids, or older kids. So you would think after 40 years, that would be really solid evidence. Every now and you get case studies, you could talk to people at conferences. Well, I have a kid who, go find it in the literature. It's not there. So there's a problem in why is everybody attracted to these right off the bat. Now, recently, as I said, there are definitely more attempts to use the device. Many studies using the PECS protocol or modified PECS protocol, and finding that kids seem to acquire early phases relatively quickly. Okay. But what we want to know is if continued use of the device leads to large picture vocabularies that are used by the youngster. It does not matter if you have 1,000 pictures in the book. If the kid uses 10, he uses 10. And there's no research showing that simply exposing kids to thousands of pictures leads to more vocabulary. It's the use of the pictures that leads to vocabulary. So we're not seeing studies showing use of SUDs in autism especially, leading to large picture vocabularies, much less large speech.
I also find sometimes people will say to me, well, we started with this SGD and we've got a 40 display screen or even a 20 display screen, but something's wrong. And when we start looking at a lot of times is they understand the mechanics of using the device. I push a button, tell the device to speak, or I just push a button and the device speaks, but we're not necessarily teaching them to push the button that's meaningful to them. So I find when I'm transitioning my children, my learners, to a speech generating device, I tend to do a lot of customization. And it depends on which app is being funded by either the family or the school or private practitioners. Some apps are much more difficult to customize. Some apps are pretty easy to customize. So I don't think there's one app that is great, that's the best at transitioning to. Again, what I've learned from behavior analysis, we need a way to test, to assess.
Yes. Ask the user, is this helpful to you?
To read that.
Right, sometimes kids need a break, but they don't like breaking, either because they don't like being alone or because they want to keep pushing through, try to accomplish the task, even though they're starting to escalate. You teach them to tolerate break, knowing in the immediate, the active break won't be a helpful replacement, or teach them a different replacement behavior. So there are other ways, if you will, to escape. There are other ways to deal with my level of stress. I mean, walking away is one way. Sometimes we have sometimes had kids stay where they are and provide a signal to all the other staff, leave Andy alone for a minute. Okay, we teach kids to relax, to take a deep breath, to do muscle tensing, relaxing exercises, just like the rest of us. Not only do the kids need to learn how to relax, so do the staff and the parents. Everyone needs to do it better. So there are other ways of taking the break. If somebody is feeling anxious to complete the task, you may want to try to dig a little deeper. Why? Why is there anxiety about finishing the task? That may have been associated with punishment for being slow. So we want to change that contingency, make sure the child understands that if you don't finish it, what do we want to do? Give them more time, give another opportunity. But again, there are multiple ways of escaping from activities.
This is an activity we're hoping to repeat. So let us know topics you would like us to cover in the future.
All right, thanks everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lori.